Welcome, everyone. Well, in the few days since launch, there have been different kinds of questions about how to use the CIMME system. And one of the questions that has come back several times is, where are my students? And I think in listening to some of you and the kinds of challenges that you've had, I think I understand where the confusion may lie. So let's pretend for a moment that we've just logged into the CIMME system. And this is the screen that we see. And so if we click on My Students, we should see a whole list of our students if they've been entered completely. I understand that there may be some of you that are not seeing your students in this list when we click on My Students. But when we want to enter data, we can simply click on My Students. But another, I think, useful trick is to just then click on the exact intervention that you want to do. Now, I have lots of interventions listed here because I'm doing this for demonstration purposes. You may only have one or two. So let's say if I click on my reading recovery intervention and then I click on this box, that's how I select people in the system. Now I can add my weekly data. So when you log into the system to begin with, you log in and you arrive at the message center, which is different than the old system if you were one of the users of it, where you saw all of your students immediately. In order to see your list of students, log in, click on My Students, or click on the individual intervention. Now, there's another question. A second question is, why don't I see anything under my intervention? So for example, here under small group instruction, why don't I see all of my students here? That's because I have to begin the intervention with them first. So there are two steps in setting up a student when we first come in. The first one was, remember, we added the student to our school, but you won't use this, again, once the student is in the database. Rather, what you want to do is you want to go to Begin Intervention. And now this is where I could say small group intervention, which is called Guided Reading Plus in your system. I'm still using the demonstration database, which hasn't been updated. We've been putting all of our efforts into updating your system. So if I go to Guided Reading Plus, for example, or a small group instruction on my screen and click Next, now I have all of the students that I could add this intervention to. So if I pick Travis, for example, and I say Begin Intervention, this is where I have to put in those key dates. And remember, these are those key dates that I sent out an email about. The first roaming date, let's say that it was on 9/1/2011. If that's the case, then the first lesson could not have begun until Monday of at least 2 weeks later. So if I go back to when 9/1 was, I can see by looking at my calendar, and I'll just skip over to my calendar here on the screen, I see that the first lesson would have been beginning the week of 9/12/2011. I want to make sure that I get this reading performance where it should be, and then I click Begin Intervention. Now that I've done that, notice that under My Students, I still have all of these students. Here's Travis, again, and here he is in small group instruction. This is the one I just began. I could also click over here on the left, small group instruction, and I see all of the children that I have in that type of intervention. So if I click then on Travis's name, and I say Enter Weekly Data, now it gives me the option to input this information. I know that this is a little bit different than the old system, but I think once you get into the routine of how it works and just a few basics, that you'll find that it's much easier and much quicker. So that's all for this kind of updated where do I find my students training video. And be sure that you can take a look at some of the other training videos in the website to help you out with other questions that you may have. Thank you, good luck, and don't hesitate to contact us for extra help.